I would like to welcome everyone, and I would like to welcome Nima for dedicating his time and sharing his project today with us. I appreciate all of you coming here, dedicating your Sunday afternoon and helping us making it a successful event. Our today's conversation is going to be around 2 hours, and Nima is going to present his research for the first half, and then we will continue with a Q&A session afterwards, and I would invite you all to participate in the Q&A discussion to make sure that we engage in a conversation together. I am Mariam Karimi. I'm the moderator of this session today, and I'm so happy to engage in discussion with you guys. In the beginning, I would like to introduce Nima and read the abstract to make the space ready for the conversation that continues after. Okay, so let me share my screen. Okay, so Nima Farzaneh is an architectural designer and researcher in the musical and architectural acoustics domain, working toward a PhD at the Center for Computer Research in Music and Acoustics at Estnford University. He holds a bachelor's degree in architecture and MS in landscape architecture from Iran. In 2010, he moved to the US and studied at Pratt Institute Post-Professional Architecture, a master's program focused on computation and design. After practicing architecture in New York City from 2011 to 2019, he went to Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute to specialize in architectural acoustics. His research interest is primarily the study of acoustics in Iran's historical architectural spaces and its correlation with the region's oral traditions, ritual, and music. Having an interest in working with new media, he incorporates technologies such as virtual acoustics, VR, and immersive experience for recreating architectural spaces and space-based musical experiences. This presentation offers a concise introduction to the field of acoustics, followed by an exploration of the sonic experiences within architectural spaces throughout history. Case studies span Paleolithic caves, ancient Egyptian tombs, Renaissance churches, and Safavid architecture in Isfahan. Through archaeological and historical research, each case study unveils findings and hypotheses regarding the influence of architectural space on oral culture and musical identity. Moreover, this discussion highlights the challenges inherent in such research stemming from the transient nature of sound. So Nima John, thank you. We are ready for your presentation. نیما جان شما هنوز میوت هستید.
اوکی الان صدای من میشنوین؟
بله بله.
اوکی. خب شما باید الان اسلاید منو ببینین. You guys should see my slide now, right? Okay. Mariam John, thanks for the introduction. It's an honor to be here today. I'm really grateful for the Fly Bottle organization and that reached out and invited me to do this talk. It's also great to see so many friends that I haven't been able to be in touch with for sometimes long time, and they're here, and I'm glad that this conversation basically brings us together again. So As you mentioned, my name is Nima Farzaneh. I define myself as an architect. I chose to be an architect when I was 18, and I stuck to it for 20 years and practiced it for some time. Then I realized there are so many other things out there I want to explore and know about. So music was on top of my list. So I found architectural acoustics to be a proper domain to create a bridge between architecture and music. So in Iran, I studied architecture in Gilan University and then in Shahid University. I worked as a designer in Tehran for almost 6 years. Then I moved to the US. I continued my architecture education. I worked at Perkins Eastman Architects for almost 8 years, mostly doing large-scale projects, urban design, and mixed-use complex. Then I went back to school, and this time I focused on acoustics, and I found this amazing program at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute that was offered by architecture department, and it was completely focused on architectural acoustics. So I had a great exposure there to this domain of research, and since then I've been after actually I finished my degree there, I joined the Center for Computer Research in Music and Acoustics at Stanford University, and what we're going to see today is the story of the last few years of my work. Um, what have I been doing? I obviously designed a lot of buildings and like cities, involved in many architecture projects before 2019. I always liked exploring other mediums of art, I've worked a lot with video, sound, music, even writing. I've been playing and composing music and collaborating with musicians and artists all around the world. And at the same time, I'm finding answers for my questions about sound and space as my research, basically. So in this talk, I'm just going to focus on the second most recent part of my activities from 2019 and onwards, when I decided to focus on acoustics, space, and sound, and this was a big shift for me from my architecture practice. After I studied acoustics, I actually tested out in 2 design projects. I'm just going to show you this quickly and just pass. This was the first competition that was recognized by Acoustical Society of America, and this was the first time I actually informed the design by some acoustical informed decision. So and also I've been working with one of my great friends, Amin Taj, on this project that is about transforming wind turbine blades, out of cycle wind turbine blades, to large scale sound sculptures. And this was a project brought to us by One Landscape, who are doing a lot of beautiful work in community building and with environmental, addressing environmental issues. So this is another example of some design projects that I did in the last few years. I'm going to talk about these terms that you're seeing right now a little bit, because I get the questions, even what is acoustics? So acoustics is a branch of physics that is concerned with the behavior of sound waves in different mediums. And architectural acoustics deals with the study of sound in built environment and usually used to offer design solutions for certain sonic qualities that is needed for particular type of space. And virtual acoustics or spatial audio refers to a particular area in audio technology that uses signal processing techniques at its core and enables us to create and simulate sound fields to study them from the perceptual point of view in controlled environment. So these are basically probably the keywords that I needed to elaborate on. Since we are talking about history, I think I wanted to start with one of the acoustic wonders, and this is one of my favorite examples of an acoustic phenomenon, and it's the chirp-like echoes produced by the staircases of pyramid Kukulcan. The staircase constitutes an acoustical diffraction grating. The echoes can be physically explained as a series of periodic sonic reflections from the small tread steps. Moving to archaeological issues, it is concerned whether the echo was intended by its Mayan builders, is merely an artifact of reconstruction, or simply an ancient acoustical design defect. So in this research that was led by David Lopman, acoustical consultant, they speculate that the echo is intentional, that the steps were designed and constructed to echo the voice of the Mayan sacred bird, the Quetzal, viewed by ancient Maya as the messenger of the god. And it's also interesting to note how this understanding shifts the conception or our understanding of the design criteria. So there is an unexpected benefit of the acoustical hypothesis for staircase design here. It offers a more plausible explanation for the narrow treads and high risers on the pyramid steps. According to the acoustical hypothesis, these parameters were chosen to tune the echo to the pitch of the Quetzal. So let's watch this short video and see this sweet explanation of the tour guide in Mexico.
This one on the north and west.
You hear the sound, right?
Now, my friends, once again, please listen in this place.
Very similar. Cute. First, same as the first one.
The same like that one. That means that only standing aligned to this staircase that is the north and that one that is the west, we can hear that noise. But amigos, it's not only clap for clapping. Remember, this temple was built in honor to Quetzalcoatl Kukulkan, right? And Quetzalcoatl Kukulkan is the representation of a bird on a snake. Amigos, that noise is one of the 400 voices of the Quetzal, the bird. So my friends, we have the noise of the bird. Where is the noise of the snake? Listen, please, not only this noise, right over there. You're gonna hear the noise of the snake. How? Listen. The bird and the rattle. Quetzalcoatl Kukulkan. And that's why, amigos, that's why it's one of the new 7 modern wonders all over the world. Come with me.
Anyway, I found
This one on
a good
north and west.
Okay. A good intro to the subject. The first research I did was basically the outcome of my 1 year at RPI. This is my master's thesis, and I studied a couple of buildings in Iran, And I would like to share with you a presentation that I prepared for Acoustical Society of America in 2020. I think this is still a valid presentation and summarizes where I started from and my work. And after this video, I'll be showing you my recent work and the continuation of this first research.
My initial title for this research was the role of architectural acoustics in advancing the oral tradition in the Safavid era. But after getting more in depth to the subject, I realized it is actually the other way around, and it would be better to call it the impact of oral tradition in acoustical environment of the Safavid era, because it was the architecture that had absorbed the knowledge from other fields such as science, poetry, and music. The sonic landscape of these architectural spaces is the materialization of a particular way of thinking. However, this research focuses more on understanding these spaces' architectural acoustics metrics rather than investigating the correlation between music and literature structures. The Safavid era was a significant ruling dynasty in Iran from 1501 to 1736 AD, which left behind a rich collection of art and architecture, as well as scientific and engineering innovations. Isfahan, one of the major cities in central Iran, was the capital of the time and still preserves a vast collection of architectural masterpieces and urban spaces created during this era. After almost 400 years, the city's historic fabric is still a functional and vibrant urban environment. The plan's significance lies in the urban continuity of tightly connected clusters of spaces with diverse programs, while each functions as a self-contained world. Homogeneous in form but diverse in function, each of the architectural entities creates a unique acoustical environment. Naqsh Jahan Square, the apotheosis of Safavid's urban design, is one of the main portals to the old Isfahan fabric and was considered the government's political hub. The plaza hosts 4 monumental structures on each side with different functions and characteristics. In this presentation, we will be looking at 2 of these buildings' acoustical attributes: Shah Mosque, located on the side south of the plaza, and Ali Qapu Palace, situated on the west side. Shah Mosque is an exemplary public building where the architect recalls one of the ancient Persian archetypes from the Sassanid era, 4 A1s and a dome configuration, and adapted for the design of the mosque. The grand space beneath the dome, a 38-meter high double cupola, acts as an echo chamber and equally distributes the sound to prayer halls on each side as well as the courtyard. The result is a tranquil soundscape that allows for synchronized prayer rituals of up to 15,000 people and intelligible public speeches. This study will look at the 3 main spaces that are physically connected and serve the mosque's main functions: Gumbad Khane, or the Dome Hall, and the 2 adjacent prayer halls. The second room under study is the 6th floor of Ali Qapu Palace, known as Music Room. Ali Qapu is a 6-story mud and baked brick structure that was built in several stages. This building initially served as the official residence of Persian emperors and later accommodated court function too. On the 6th floor, a highly decorated room was dedicated to serving high-profile guests and appropriated for intimate and ensemble music performance. The carved stucco and cut-out mukarnas are unique to this building, and besides aesthetic values, also contribute to space's acoustical attributes, which will be discussed later. Each of the two rooms serves a different function. Therefore, the volumetric needs and material palettes are different. Shah Mosque's volume is 38 times larger than Ali Ghapo's, and it is all covered with ceramic tiles, a highly reflective material. In contrast, Ali Ghapo's music room's interior is covered with a hollow and a thin layer of stucco attached to the brick and mud structure with an air gap in between. Despite these differences, both spaces are typologically very similar. A symmetrical arrangement of the rooms with a more massive centerpiece covered with a dome. The dome dissolves into a cube and creates a square-shaped plan with smaller attachments on the sides. The two rooms on either side of the dome are also made of a cluster of connected smaller spaces that create the larger rooms. The mosque's side rooms are pillared prayer halls composed of connected modular units with curved ceilings. However, in Ali Ghapo, side rooms are a cluster of various size smaller spaces which are semi-separated. The acoustic simulation of these rooms using a computer-generated 3D model was performed, assuming both spaces are unoccupied and unfurnished. This approach enabled us to investigate the differences in sound energy flow only caused by volumetric and permanent materials properties. The sound sources in both cases are located in the central space under the dome. In the Shah Mosque, it is situated above a raised platform called Mihrab, where clergies deliver speeches. In Ali Ghapo, the sound source is placed where presumably a music ensemble would perform. Both rooms were excited with a white noise of 94 dB at 1 kHz. The receivers are placed in three similar locations in both rooms. One in the main domed space across where the sound source is located, and the two other receivers are located in the side rooms, one with proximity to the central domed space and the other one further away from it. Let's first look at the impulse responses acquired from the simulation for the receivers located at both buildings' dome hall. At Shah Mosque's dome hall, the time delay between the direct sound and later reflections describe why this space is considered echo chamber and adequately distributes the sound to each of the side's prayer halls. It's reported that 7 distinct echoes can be heard while standing right underneath the dome. In contrast, Ali Ghapo's domed room first reflections occurs very early on, making the space sound more intimate. The difference in volume sizes of the two spaces describes this fact. The higher range of recorded pressure of the first reflections in the mosque dome hall shows how the ceramic tiles and smooth stone finishes reflectivity on large flat or curved surfaces in the mosque result in loud and distinct echoes. While in Ali Ghapo, the highly fragmented Mokarnas design with stucco results in more absorption and scattering and consequently a diffuse sound field. The sound pressure data shows an increasing trend from lower to higher frequency bands in both cases, but it is interesting to notice how much the mosque's perceived sound is louder than the direct sound pressure level. This fact reveals spatial properties' role in amplifying the sound, driven by the volume, geometry, and finished materials. The study of the sound strength, G, verifies how the larger volume of the mosque acts as a low-pass filter and attenuates higher frequency. The G values ranges for various receiver positions show that the sound is appropriately audible from any spot in both rooms. The data taken in the unoccupied mosque show that reverberation values are very high, providing the room with a unique feeling of majesty. As expected, while in the Shah Mosque the maximum reverberation time exceeds 13 seconds in lower frequency bands, the frequency range of the singing formats, like 2 to 3 kilohertz, has a much shorter reverberation time. Notably, the reverberation time at mid frequencies in the mosque is much higher than in an empty concert hall. In Ali Qapu, reverberation time ranges between 0.3 to 1.75 seconds in all three receiver positions, and it is maximum at 500 Hz. The significant difference between the reverberation times in the two buildings show how the change of scale and material palette can appropriate a particular architectural typology for various uses. Shah Mosque is intended to accommodate a large crowd for religious rituals, while Ali Qapu Music Room is more desirable space for intimate gatherings and music performance. By studying the clarity factor C80, we notice longer reverberation time causes lower clarity in the mosque's dome hall. In contrast, the receivers located in the mosque's prayer halls show an acceptable range between negative 3.3 to 5.3 dB, even in unoccupied condition. A similar pattern can be seen in Ali Qapu, but with higher values across different frequency bands. Despite the lower Stearns factor in Ali Qapu, the higher clarity values can explain how cutout patterns in Mukarnas structure help create a diffuse sound field. The clarity in this case ranges between 3.5 dB to 9.3. Comparing acoustic metrics in these two rooms shows how one archetypal form could result in different acoustical behavior and how architectural features are adjusted to satisfy various needs and still conform to the same design principle. The architects of the Safavid era used similar design principles and construction methods for both of these rooms, but they adopted them for spaces' intended function by considering the appropriate scale and proportion, choices of finished materials, and thoughtful articulation in the interior design to serve unaided oral communication. A further study is needed to understand how these rooms functioned acoustically for.
Okay, so that was what I achieved, or the process of my research at RPI and what I did in those specific sites in Iran. So since I came to Stanford, I was extremely lucky to be admitted to one of the best places to do research in music and acoustics. Karma, our center, is a family of kind and knowledgeable people. Each one of them, from the student body to faculty members, are great resources, and they're there to generously share their knowledge and experience with you. And the goal of this center is kind of to blend science, technology, and music. So since I've joined Karma, I've been involved in research projects involving culturally significant sites with specific acoustical properties, which I will be talking later about them. I've been also doing some creative projects such as musical compositions, sound installations, electroacoustic instrument design, and multimedia works. And a big chunk of my work is also learning about audio signal processing and acoustics, which is a very like vast domain of knowledge that requires a lot of work. I joined the project that my advisor, Professor Berger, started some years ago, Sound, Space, and the Aesthetics of the Sublime. And this is the project funded by the Templeton Religion Trust. And I kind of like brought my own questions and curiosities to this project, and we'll be talking about some of these works. I need to kind of have a definition for these two words that are foundational to this research. There are enough textbook definitions available for these terms, but I realized I won't understand it until I have my own definition of it and internalize it in a way, you know. So as an agnostic person, to me, a sublime experience is simply those moments in life that fascination with beauty of a phenomena strike you in a way that has a long-lasting effect and presence in your memory, and you seek it back once in a while to refresh your memory of an extraordinary experience that once happened to you. However, transcendence refers to the process of spiritually being elevated to a different state of consciousness that results in an awe moment that reflects feelings such as pure joy, fear, or reverence. Transcendental experiences and encountering sublime have been depicted in many artworks, and it is also achievable through certain rituals. But music and space both can reinforce and facilitate such processes. Nowadays, we all have some examples of those moments in our phone's camera roll. I just chose two of them because I know when we face an event like that, we want to capture it and keep it forever. So this was my visit to Grand Canyon. And this is the entrance hall of Isfahan, Ali Qapu's palace. Anyway, these are like just like an examples of like those personal moments that I kind of experienced something like that, just to give you a sense of what I mean. Okay, so now I'm gonna just like briefly talk about the 4 projects that we've been doing here at Karma with my colleagues. Part of it is based on the work that we have been doing in the last 2 years, the work led by Professor Berger and Luna, Valentin, Eito Murakami had been doing a lot of work, and we've been collaborating on these together. There are 4 sites that we've been focusing on. One is a cave in France. One is a tomb in Egypt. Actually, it's a series of tombs that we are studying. Shah Mosque in Isfahan and a church in Italy. So I'm going to briefly talk about these. But what is the big question here? And that ties these projects together. To me, we're basically trying to use empirical methods to address questions within the humanities domain. So there is like a scientific aspect to this work that is trying to answer questions in humanity domain. Okay, I think I skipped a slide even more. So we observe a growing curiosity towards the exploration of ephemeral cultural artifacts that until recently remained beyond our reach within the academic community of archaeologists, anthropologists, historians, and musicologists. One important dimension is sound. Sound is inherently intangible and transitory, yet it captures the essential characteristics of culture, reanimating sonic scenes of the past enrich our understanding of culture. So by introducing the audio domain, researchers are creating new hypotheses regarding everyday life and ritual practices in ancient societies, or music pieces, compositions that had dealt with space. There are different methods that we use in our work with sufficient knowledge of the size and geometries that comprise the structure, along with absorption and scattering coefficients and properties of the material of surfaces within the structure. An acoustical model can be approximated by computing an impulse response. An impulse response is basically the response of the room to an impulse, and it basically captures the identity of the room from that particular position of where the sound is recorded and when the sound source is placed. So this allows for the creation of virtual acoustic oralizations of lost and inaccessible sites, convolving the recording of a strategically placed sound source, typically a speaker playing a sine sweep or a loud impulse such as a balloon pop. The acoustic features and characteristics of a measured space can be applied to any sound. So these type of oralizations provided new theories about musical performance practices and are currently being created as a preservation method in recreating the acoustics of lost or significantly altered sites. In this work, we used synthesized impulse responses for the creation of virtual acoustic oralizations of lost and inaccessible sites, and we also used measured impulse responses for the existing historic structures. I was very lucky to be able to do some field work in Isfahan in summer 2022, and this was a project funded by Persian Heritage Foundation. They accept my proposal and they provided the resources to conduct this research. I was also lucky enough to be introduced to Center for Research on Roads, Housing and Urban Development, and there was a great team of curious acousticians and engineers from the acoustic lab, including Dr. Amini Nasab, who I think is here, and I really appreciate their help and support. They brought all the tools that we needed, and it was a great 4 or 5 days of field work. I should also thank my friend Vedat Famurzadeh, who is my high school friend, but happens to be an acoustician, and he was helping us along the way, and we really appreciate his help. So we were able to do measurements in 3 buildings around the نقش جهان اسکوئر، عالی قاپو، شیخ فضلالله ماسک، شیخ لطف الله شاه ماسک. And I would like to show you the moment that we recorded the impulse response. So here we are popping a balloon. وایسین اکوی صدا بره بعد بزن. Yes, that was the historic moment of recording an impulse response. And what you see here on the left is the spectrogram of the recorded response. As you can see, there are these like lines that are equally spaced, and they get smaller and smaller as time goes. But you see, these are those distinct echoes that we hear when we stand at the center of the dome hall. And here I'm going to show you how we use this impulse response to create the oralization of what a sound might sound in this room. So the first sound that I'm playing for you is just a dry sound with no impact of any kind of space or room. The second sound is what is the result of convolving that dry sound with the room impulse response from the mosque. So you can clearly see the difference, and here on these spectrograms you can see how like the sharper the colors get, it shows the strength of energy, and you can see how much longer energy lingers in space when you add the basically reverberation to the dry sound. And that's basically what we are doing to create virtual acoustics scenarios. Okay, this was kind of our arrangement for the measurements we did in this one room. We had like a day of work and managed to do, I don't know, around probably more than 20 measurements. So here I'm gonna just start uh, uh, talking about like some of my observations after doing these measurements and basically studying them. Obviously, we know that the Shah Mosque holds a significance as the symbolic representation of the Kyrgyz authority in a newly established capital city of Isfahan, marking the resurgence of centralized government after a period of approximately 150 years of fragmentation and decentralization in Iran. To achieve its full functionality as an assembly space, and given the political significance of engaging the public for the king, Shah Abbas, the mosque had to operate as a sonic apparatus. The strategic placement of the mosque along the primary axis of the plaza, along with the positioning of its 5 towering minarets, serves the purpose of optimizing the propagation of sound over long distances. This design facilitates the mosque's role in broadcasting public announcement and the call to prayer to the neighboring community. Furthermore, our objective is to examine the acoustic characteristics of various events, including sermons, khutbahs, communal prayers, Eid celebration, and the commemoration of holy religious figures. There is sufficient evidence to contend that the acoustics was taken into account not only during the urban planning phase, but also in architectural design of the structure. A noteworthy example of this is the central dome hall that functions as a reverberation chamber with highly reflective surfaces and a double shell dome. Its careful placement at the heart of the complex that includes interconnected rooms like adjacent prayer halls and the courtyard highlights the consideration of acoustics in the overall design. Distinct echoes under a parabolic dome occur due to the way sound waves reflects off of the curved surfaces. When sound wave hits a concave curved surface like a parabolic dome, they reflect in a focused manner. The shape of the dome causes the sound waves to converge and reflect back toward a focal point, creating a stronger, more focused echo compared to what you might experience in an open space or against flat surfaces. It's actually very interesting to see how this mosque has become a totally different place. In a way, the function has changed. This is nowadays Shah Mosque is been used as a gallery space, an arts gallery. People come to just like see the architecture, and that central spot that we just like heard has become a point that people come and perform music. I recorded so many examples, and I know if you are following Iran's videos and what's happening, you definitely know about more of these type of performances there. And here is an example of some students visiting the mosque, and their instructor forced one of the students to sing azan. Anyway, there is something about this, and as you can see, it's just an undeniable fact that that one spot is a performing spot. Taking into account these acoustic characteristics, our examination also includes a range of sonic qualities, including speech intelligibility during sermons and the soundscapes within the mosque, which serves as a welcoming space for gatherings and socializing. Additionally, we address practical requirements for ritual performances such as kapala singing, the call for prayers, and the synchronization of movements as announced by the mukabbers. So these are the areas that I'm like looking into, and it's part of my ongoing work. A more recent example is the Church of the Ospedaletto in Venice, and reanimating the sound of space in which we know the music that was performed in it, but lack complete knowledge regarding performance practices. The acoustic signature of a space influences decision of tempo, loudness, balance, and ornamentation. This church was home to numerous works by the composer Nikolai Porpora, whose bel canto style left much room for experimentation. Recreating the acoustical quality of the church provides a sense of how bel canto music might have been realized at the time. So we basically created a series of VR experiences for each of these places that we studied, and we used our measurements or simulated methods to recreate the sound of the space. The next example is Chauvet Cave in Ardèche, France, and it is one of the most significant sites for the study of art form from the Paleolithic era. The cave houses a wealth of evidence of human life, including some of the earliest cave paintings known, dated 36,000 years ago. Acoustical explorations of the cave started in 2022 and 2023, led to the acoustical measurements and documentation of several rooms and galleries. The recording of impulse responses subsequently facilitated the recreation of auralization, immersive VR experience, and we are exploring how the combination of acoustical modeling and immersive VR might provide new perspective on archaeological research. This is also a site that is not accessible to public, so it is also a big urge to kind of recreate these simulations for public to be able to experience. Another project is in Egypt. Now we transition from the depth of the Chauvet cave to the halls of Saqqara, an ancient Egyptian tomb. Echoing the approach we undertook for the Chauvet cave, our exploration of Saqqara holds the ambition of recircuiting a site that has long faded from existence. Leveraging archives of early 20th century Egyptologists, we first crafted a three-dimensional model that recreates a segment of the ancient site. Then this reconstructed geometry allowed us to compute synthesized impulse responses, and we were able to bring life to interactions between chambers, allowing sound to flow pathways and echo through spaces as it would have been thousands years ago. And there are certain hypotheses posed by the archaeology team and architecture historians who are involved in the project, and we are trying to design these studies in a way to answer those questions. Here there is a demo of some of these VR experiences that we created, and I'm gonna just leave you watch it. And it would be great to use your headphones if you have them on your side to get a better sense of the auralization and the acoustic of the space.
In the year 1878, I took my degree of Doctor of Medicine of the University of London and proceeded to Netley to go through the course prescribed for surgeons in the army. Having completed my studies there, I was duly attached to the 5th Northumberland Fusiliers as assistant surgeon. The regiment was stationed in India at the time, and before I could join it, the Civil Afghan War broke in that war. On landing at Pompeii, I learned from my corps that Iqbal was taking classes and was already leading the enemy's infantry. I followed, however, with many other officers who were in the same situation as myself, and succeeded in reaching Kandahar safely, where I found my regiment and at once entered upon my new duties. The campaign brought honours and promotion to many, but for me it had nothing but misfortune and disaster. I was removed from my brigade and attached to the Berkshires, with whom I served at the fatal battle of عنوان. There I was struck on the shoulder by a Josselin bullet, which shattered the bone and grazed the subclavian artery. I should have fallen into the hands of the murderous glasses, had it not been for the devotion and courage shown by Murray, my orderly, who threw me across a pack horse and succeeded in bringing me safely.
Anyway, I think that's enough. Yeah, that was the summary of what I've been doing so far. What is next? We're trying to develop methods for verification of these simulations we do based on in situ measurements and making the comparison and improving the simulated versions because recreating sound fields is a very computationally expensive process, and it's very tedious or hard to get like a good resolution, high fidelity basically simulation of a sound field, especially for large spaces. Another thing that I'm planning to do is designing psychoacoustic experiments to study the impact of room acoustics on experiencing sublime or any other perceptual studies that might relate to space and the topic of the research or the hypothesis of the research we're doing. And I always like try to apply these whatever I learn in art form, so I'm constantly like and trying to use this knowledge or whatever I learn to create art. So these are probably what I will continue to do afterward. And thank you for listening. I have a piece of music ready for you that uses this spatial audio techniques in mixing of it, so you will kind of like get a feeling of what virtual acoustics, how virtual acoustics can be applied in music. I can play it now, or we can leave it for after our discussion, or if there are any questions.
No, actually, Nima John, let's play it now.
Okay,
I'm excited
sure.
to listen to it. Thank you.
Thank you. I might just like do like 5 minutes of it. It's a long piece, but Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Nima John, for sharing this excellent presentation and helping us learn about your project. This was quite impactful and one of the most sonic presentations that we had so far in Fly Buzzer. Great work. Thank you. Okay, so I would like to invite the audience to ask questions if you have any. Maybe I start myself while we are waiting, guys. Come up with your questions. But Nima, I have, you know what, the experience. I really enjoyed this line that you spoke about, the experience of sublime, and that was one of my own first experiences of, you know, architecture of Isfahan and Jome Mosque, right? Walking there and being an agnostic person as well, experiencing something sublime and super spiritual, right? The architecture puts you in that sensation. So I have this question for you. Now that you're going through this practice, are you thinking that you can quantify what sublime can be? You are turning it into something that can be measured, free from the typology of architecture, whether it's a church, whether it's a mosque, whether it's a cemetery. But you know what, this quality, the essence that you extract from in terms of volume, in terms of these acoustic materials, reflective materials, is there something that can be quantified? That's a question that I would like to start with.
Yes. I think the answer is to a certain extent, because when you experience something like that, it's usually a process that you cannot really isolate in labs condition, you know. For example, like if you are impressed by what you hear in Shah Mosque in Isfahan, it's part of the process of being in Isfahan, getting there, being present in a day that has certain qualities, and it's the certain time of day. No matter where you have these type of experiences, I think it's part of it's a snapshot of a longer process. So in lab environment, there are two things. One is we definitely need to bring the visual experience in and make it believable, so we can study the spatial audio and spatial visual impact on the experience when we are designing experiments like that. But the truth is, it's still like it doesn't have those other components. We might be able to recreate an immersive experience to a certain extent and look at what happens before, during, and after of encountering such a space by looking at, for example, brain signals. And that's what has been done in psychoacoustic studies. You basically see how your brain reacts to these kind of like environments. So I think it is measurable, but it's not necessarily the sublime experience. It's just a shift in your mood, in your your experience from one domain to another domain, that might be able to simulate it with an immersive or VR experience. Yeah.
Thanks, because that was what I was also thinking about, you know, the idea of a sequence. It's like going through that market and then the courtyards, you know, it happens in a sequence, and then there is this transition and moments of contrast. And there are other aspects like, you know, the haptic quality of the space, the visual scenery that is changing. You are absolutely right. It's not something that can be isolated in a lab. It has to be seen as a bigger domain.
Yeah, and it's definitely a multi-sensory experience. Like we would like to be able to like separate these like components, but in fact, when it is a multi-sensory experience and it's not easy to, take out or pick one,
Yes.
sense and just like focus on it and have that like sublime experience. We can definitely get better answers when we have controlled experiments that only look at the sound or sonic aspect of the experience. But when when other senses gets involved in it, then it's more difficult. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you very much. Any other questions? And maybe they can be in Farsi as well. If you want to pose a question in
Yes,
Farsi,
I'm
that's fine.
happy to answer questions in Farsi.
Uh,
And I'm really like, please go.
Yes,
Go ahead.
yes, Abbas, please.
I find your research very interesting, especially for the people who have not had the chance to be in Isfahan and try that for their own experience. And it is great that you can use that experience and that techniques in your new music development. Very nice.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, that's one of the intents of my work too, to make our culture more accessible and create ways to experience these spaces. As we all know, Iran is not a very welcoming place these days for tourists, so it's great to be able to like recreate these spaces and take people through the same experience that we have in those places. I actually like recorded a lot of like 360 videos and soundscape recordings of Isfahan, and I'm trying to also create a documentary style with proper audio and visuals so people can actually experience the entire 360 VR experience. Yeah, that's one of the applications of this research. Yeah.
Very nice. Very nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, while you are thinking about other questions, maybe I continue the conversation, and please raise your hands. Nima, now that you're going through this practice, I would like to know what future destinations you're thinking about, you have in mind in terms of where this research is going. What other domains of practice, like cinema, game design, right, beyond architecture, do you see the implications of such research being, being employed to, having an impact? And I also have this question of how this process is informing your compositions in music, your art practice. I want to know how you are engaging that, especially in this tombak chamber that you played at the end. I would like to know how you compose this music and how, again, the implications of your research impacts the process. You mentioned a few things. I would love it if you could elaborate a little further.
Of course. In terms of creative use of this research, it really like changes over time. I think as much as I know about these scientific facts, I try to implement them in different ways. I think one aspect of our significant architectural spaces that has not been explored is their possibility and their potential as music performance spaces. And as we know, for example, in churches, like pipe organ had become like an integrated piece in the architecture, but we never had that opportunity because the relationship between religion and architecture was different. Music was not allowed in most of these places, and that's why that's one of the reasons that our music has a different tone and timbre to it. it's more made for like very intimate and private spaces. Now I think I have found this possibility of like using these sonic environments as music instruments by themselves, because any music instruments has a reverberation chamber. You know, there is a sitar, a tar, a guitar. These all have like these are all designed in certain way that they create sound in certain way. It filters sound in certain way, and architectural space does that too. So for me, while I'm studying these buildings and I find out about their properties, for example, every room has certain modes or resonances that in those certain frequencies sound gets amplified. And if you compose your piece in a way that is informed from those acoustical properties of the room, then you'll be able to like play with your sonic material differently. So that's something I can tell about like how it's been implemented in this in my music. For example, in this piece that you just heard, it's actually a overlaying of two acoustical spaces, one very reverberant space and one very like dry and intimate space. And I kind of like overlay these two spaces, and you can see like sometimes there's this movement that you feel it comes from far away or it's within a very large space, and sometimes it's just like very close to you. So and there are other aspects to the sound, like always the directionality and the distance of the sound is being incorporated in this type of mixing, audio mixing. So you get more spatial information about the sound source. And you can layer your sounds and instruments in 3 dimensions. So that's how it's been implemented in music. Regarding the future of my work and my research, I mean, uh, th- th- uh, obviously there are so many like areas that this technology and this knowledge is being used, as you mentioned, in game industry, in hopefully more in architecture. It's not as much as needed, especially in like designing new like cities, or like looking at built environment with a broader perspective. It's more right now acoustics is more about like noise mitigation, or like designing for certain functions that sound has importance to it. But it's definitely something that grow like attracting a more people to like think about it and use it. Uh, and I don't know about my own future, honestly. I'm just like very open to everything and anything. I'm like finding myself like writing and reading a lot. So I think that would be my next thing. Like I'm seeing a lot of potential to develop this research in different ways. I would like to be able to implement this knowledge in a way that informs architectural design. So I think that is something that people don't get enough exposure at architecture schools. So I think it's very interesting to design based on sound and design for sound. And I think it's a totally different design approach, and I think there is a lot to explore there.
Definitely. I mean, the implications in architecture can be very interesting, but also sound editing for movies. was,
Yes,
about this kind
yeah.
of approaches that you are developing in terms of, I was just remembering the movie The English Patient, because I was recently reading a book by a conversation between Walter Murch and Michael Andonje, the novelist of the story. And it was, this idea of the sound of the bells, the sound of the bar, the sound of the clocks, all this, how in the mind of the writer and in the mind of the film editor, how they come together to build this sonic environment for this story to move forward. And as you were discussing, I was putting this together, and it was quite interesting for me. I don't see any hands up. Any other question? I have another question myself, but I want the audience to engage. As you are doing, I realized that you had that cave, you studied that cave in France. You studied the tombs, the burial sites in Egypt, the church in Venice, right? And then the Jome Mosque or the Shah Mosque in Isfahan. I want to understand, okay, you are studying the sound qualities, these acoustic qualities of these spaces. How do you tie them to these cultural, psychological implications from these cultures? How do you place them at this intersection of, the kind of function of this architecture and sound spaces in regards to the kind of traditions that they want to elevate? If that makes any sense.
Yes, it does make sense, and that's actually a very critical question for all of us. We're always refining these questions as we go, because, for example, in case of the burial chambers in Egypt, there are some hypotheses about like how these rituals, like post-burial rituals, pre-burial rituals were performed, and there are some evidences, like as further you go in history, it's more difficult to find like evidences about sound and music, but we with the help of archaeologists, we are trying to find like narratives that we can shape a scenario and see how sound was involved in those rituals, because as I mentioned, the nature of sound, the ephemeral version, nature of sound, doesn't let us to like touch those moments and like see how they were impacting those rituals, but it's always an open-ended questions, like there there were some hypotheses that were posed to us, and we just like took them and tried to see if they make sense or not. Like, for example, if there is a group of mourners standing on top of the tomb outside of the chamber, how would the sound be perceived inside? Is it even audible? Or what if the like ritual happening inside? How many people need to be there to be heard outside? Or what is the function of the mastaba itself on top of some of these burial chambers? How did it change during the, like some of these took like centuries to be completed, so there were these like periods that the mastaba was half built and they were like filling it with different offerings and stuff. So how did wind in those like in that climate affected and the perception of the sound and those rituals? In case of Iran, my own curiosity grew from like understanding the relationship between our musical tradition and these architectural spaces, and that's basically what I'm after. I don't think I have an answer yet, but I am trying to find out like how this was affecting different music practices inside the mosque, even though religious, but I'm sure like it has been kind of shaped by the space that these music were performed. Um, yeah. Uh, and in like for example in case of Chauvet cave, there are obviously like these like certain spots in the cave that were chosen to have these paintings, and when you locate yourself there you realize there is a difference in your sonic uh, perception too when you're standing there. What how can we describe it? Can we find evidences or like clues that really shows the sonic aspect also mattered and shaped our cultural, you know, evolution?
Thank you, Nima. Thank you. And actually, when you were showing the virtual landscape of that that cave, the cave in France, I was thinking because as you were moving in the space, the quality of the sound was changing. There were moments that it was reverberating, and there was moments that it was like the sound is being absorbed and it was more quiet. And yes, that was a natural setting, but it reminded me of experience that I had with one of Richard Serra's sculptures, of walking along this, big installation, and then the sound quality keeps changing. And as I'm moving from the focal point of these concave mirrors to different spaces and different curvatures, and that again, experiencing that in your presentation reminded me of something that was man-made. Quite interesting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Questions from the audience?
I think I answered all questions in my presentation.
You did.
But I really appreciate those people who made the time and came. I'm really happy to see their names here.
Yes.
I hope I get feedback from them whenever they feel like, and I'm available for further conversation about this.
Fantastic. Nima, you stay. I have something to talk to you about, but I would like to thank Nima for sharing this critical work. You definitely opened some new windows in my mind, and I think the audiences, in terms of thinking about architecture, in terms of thinking about this dimension. And I will follow your research in future to learn more and see how it continues to develop. Thank you very much. And I would like to thank our audience for joining us this Sunday and participating in this session. Until next, have a good day. Thank you.